Okay.
Flour everywhere.
I do. Is it all over me?
It's in the floor. It's on the countertop. It's everywhere.
I'm a messy cook.
Yes.
Well, welcome back, and thank y'all for watching. We got a lot we want to talk to y'all about today. We decided to go ahead and make this our
cut off.
testimony video. Let's see if we can adjust it. There we are. Okay. We got a lot to get done though, so we're gonna do some real life stuff while we talk some real life with you. So I'm in the middle of making a pizza, sourdough pizza. So if it turns out well, I'll show you and give you the recipe. But who knows?
If it don't turn out well, you'll never hear of it again.
We'll pretend like it didn't happen. So we're just going to take today to go ahead and talk with you guys about who we are and the journey we've been on for the last 20 plus years together. It's not been easy, but we're going to be completely transparent with you guys about who we are and where we've been, and all for the purpose of helping you realize who God is and how He became so very real to us. So whatever we tell you in this video, although we're characters in the story, we don't want you to think that we're making it about us, because it's really not. It's the life we live, the story that we have. But the only reason we survived it, the only reason we are who we are today is because of Jesus Christ. And I just want to say that right here in the beginning. I hope that doesn't turn a lot of you off. Stick around for the story. If nothing else, you just kind of know that there's hope and redemption and healing. And honestly, I just think it's a good story. So we hope that you kind of settle in and listen and get something out of it. I will start with, Jeff and I had always said when we tell our story that we'd start with our background, because our background plays a huge factor. Our story, the meat of our story, is really our marriage. But our growing up years before we came together really plays a huge part in that, because that shaped our worldview, that shaped our way of thinking about relationships and stuff like that. So I'll start real quick and just kind of give you a condensed version of my earlier years. I was born to a single mom. My brother and I have an older brother. He's 2 years older than me. My mom did the best she could. She worked her tail off to take care of us, but my grandparents had to help a lot. My aunt, my mom's sister, she's like another mom to me. So we had a lot going on. Mom working, and my brother and I, we wasn't with her, we were with them. And so there was a lot of love there, so I won't deny that at all. My struggles didn't come from a lack of love from them. My grandparents were the greatest people that I ever knew. My aunt was just like I said, a second mom, big sister, all in one. And my mom was the hardest working person I ever knew. So we never went without. But there was just something about not having a dad. I never knew who my dad was up until just a couple years ago. And that was always a void for me. That was always something lacking. And even as a young kid, I just knew. Like I knew something was different. My family didn't look like everybody else's family. And honestly, there was also this realization that I didn't look like the rest of my family. My brother and I are biracial. Our biological dad, black, and our mom's white. We were raised by my mom's family, so never knew biological dads or anything like that. So that's been a hard place for me. So I knew that I looked different from them, and I always asked questions about that. I had questions about where my dad was, why wasn't he around, why wasn't we worth his time. I mean, I was just that one. I was just like a dog on a bone about it. Drove my mama crazy.
Nosy.
Maybe a little. Even aggressive about it to a point. But I mean, I would stay at friends' houses and they'd be so excited when their daddy would come home, and I didn't understand that. I didn't have that. And my papa was my father figure and a wonderful example, great man. But there's still something that lacks in a kid's heart when they don't have a dad. Dads are very important. Please hear me on that. You're very important. So that kind of started my foundation of feeling already broken. I mean, I was broken before I even knew I was broken. There was a void. There's something missing. I was frustrated, seeking that acceptance. Being born in the 80s, growing up in the 90s, I didn't feel accepted by everybody just because of the biracial factor. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of good people. You know, a lot of good friends, a lot of good people who just loved me for who I was, but a lot didn't, and a lot of them didn't get to even know who I was. I was just rejected out of the gate. I had a lot of self-esteem struggles because I just didn't like how I looked. I thought my lips were too big and my hair was too big. Just for kicks and giggles, I'll try to insert a picture of my first grade afro. But I had a lot of self-esteem issues, a lot of rejection issues. And while I couldn't have put those names to that stuff at the time, I just knew I didn't feel right. So that's a little bit about my background. Now my worldview as far as Christianity, thanks to my grandmother's influence, I was well aware of God, there being one God, a holy God. I knew that. I had knowledge of that. She did her best to teach me as much as she could about that. But I was not in a position to accept it. I didn't know that you could have a relationship with Him. I just knew there was a higher power and to respect it. To love Him, I did not. To accept His love for me, didn't even understand that. My idea of a Heavenly Father was tainted by my idea of an earthly father. My mom did eventually remarry when I was 8, and while he did everything he could to provide for us, a nurturer he is not. And he'll watch this, and I have no problem saying that, he knows. A good man, but not the nurturing fatherly type. He's military, and that made it hard. He was a little hard on us. I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying he was actually a lot hard on us. So there's still not a daddy-daughter relationship there. He was a provider, a good provider, caretaker, but that was, in our earlier years, that was about all. But I gotta say though, he didn't know Jesus at that time either. And I can speak to a change in his life now because of him meeting Jesus, but we'll get into that later. But that's just a little bit about my background, and so you kind of know where my beginnings are. And now I'll let Jeff tell you a little bit about his.
Yeah, this is pitiful.
It's pitiful. It's pretty bad. That's why thin crust shouldn't exist.
That's not better.
That's wonderful. The thick crust.
All right, so
The pizzas are in the oven, so we'll see. Give those a few minutes, and then there we go.
while we're waiting, we'll just we'll talk a little bit about me. Our stories are similar in the way that the absence of a father. Mm-hmm. We both spent a lot of time. Well, I was raised by my mom and papa, and she spent a lot of time with her grandparents. So, and I lived with mine, but we both say that our grandparents were the greatest people in the world, and it's true. But my influences were, I was always around someone drinking or doing whatever. Not my grandparents. They did not. My mother had me when she was 17 years old, and she still lived at home. And when she left home, I stayed behind with my mom and papa. So they were my parents. I remember just like in school, if people were talking about Father's Day stuff or their dad or whatever, it made me feel weird or awkward, and I didn't even know why. But I had people that took care of me very well, and they loved me very much, so it was never an issue with that. I just never knew my dad, and still have never met him. I know who he is now. Recently met my brother. He's just a few days younger than me. It's a whole nother story. Maybe another time. He and I can talk about that. So,
Yeah.
But was introduced to drinking probably 9 or 10 years old. So I remember stealing from my uncle. Would get drunk and pass out when we were camping or whatever. My cousin and I, who was my best friend at the time, he was like my brother. We would steal beers out of his 12-pack when he was passed out with his head on it. Sometimes we'd go over there and steal them, and just like I said, introduced to drinking at a very early age. It was just a normal thing to me. I thought everybody lived that way. I started smoking pot at like 13. Again with my cousin, same thing. He was living with us at this time, but and it was my choice. It was my choice. I was not. No one forced anything on me. I chose to do it because I thought it was normal. I thought everybody done it. And then I remember being 19 years old when I met her. I had always lived that life to where, on the weekends we got together and we partied. And then meeting her, I thought it was just normal, so that's what we started doing too. We would party on the weekends. So that was pretty much the way I grew up. Never heard anybody talking about God or anything about Jesus or nothing. So in my mind, this is all it was. It was just us and the life that we chose and the things that we chose to do. So
yeah. We carried those voids and that struggle into our relationship. We started dating. I was 17. You were 20. Really thinking that we could figure this out, that we were going to do a better job, that, honestly, I just thought I was grown. But immediately after I graduated high school, we moved in together. We were just trying to do this thing, thinking we had life figured out. Yep. And we soon realized we did not.
Neither one of us knew what to do. We didn't know.
We didn't know how to love each other, take care of each other. We were self-seeking in a way. I think we put a lot of pressure on each other to fill voids. We didn't know that at the time, but
yeah, she was expecting things out of me that, since I had no father, I had no idea how to do any of it.
Yeah,
I had no idea. So
we there's a lot of red flags early on before we even got married. We lived together for a long time. Let's see, we dated for about 3.5 years before we got married, and most of that time we were two of those years I think we lived together.
We did.
We split up a few times because we just didn't know. We didn't know how to love each other. We didn't know how to see each other's needs. It was your unmet expectations.
It's usually
is what it comes down to.
A me first kind of relationship.
Yeah. We ended up having our daughter in 2001, and she was born 2 months before we even decided to get married. Even though all the red flags were there, there had already been. I didn't know about his drug use. I knew, of course, we drank together. I didn't like drugs. I guess I thought I was superior in that way. It was nonsense, but I had no interest in drugs. I didn't want to date anybody who did drugs, and I made that clear to him. So rather than not doing drugs, he just told me he wasn't doing drugs.
Well, it's the easiest way to, have your cake and eat it too. So.
Yeah. So, but as people tend to do, addicts tend to do, they get sloppy.
Yeah, it happens. Like I said, when Kayla was born, we were married, and I always remember thinking that, I didn't have a dad, and I'm going to be a good dad. I'm going to love my children. They're going to know what it means to have a father. I never intended to go down the road that I went down with my life. And at that point, I remember thinking, she had friends that were discipling her, and she was learning about a relationship with Jesus. And I guess at that point, things started getting bad at that point, because I was totally resistant to it. And I remember it even making me mad, and because I was closed off and I didn't even want to hear it. Some of the best people that we know was ladies that she worked with, and they loved her unconditionally, and they discipled her and they taught her, and their husbands. I mean, he is still a good friend of mine. I don't talk to him like I should anymore, but he was trying to teach me and disciple me and help me, but I mean, it would make me angry, and I didn't want to talk about it because I really didn't believe in God at that point. So I mean, if you're in that place, hear me out. Don't get angry. Just be open-minded. Because I wasn't. I was closed off to it. But I remember getting into other things beyond marijuana and alcohol, and that's when things started really getting bad.
It was a spiral out of control. I did not know.
She still didn't know anything. So
he was good at hiding it for a while, but then he got sloppy, and he'd actually gotten into, I don't know if you mentioned it or not, but the cocaine, and then eventually meth.
Yeah.
And that changes a person.
Yeah, and we're skipping ahead. I mean, there's voids in between that we're not filling, but
we don't want this to be a 2-hour video.
Yeah, we don't really have time for that. But we've been married for several years at this point, and Camden was on the way.
Yeah, I'd had suspicions before Camden was born. So our first child was born, and we ended up separating a few times, just trying to, just fighting, because do not get me wrong, yes, he was doing drugs and lying and all this stuff, but I was also very aggressive by nature, because I too was wanting to hold on to this my kid's gonna have a dad idea, and I'm like, we're not gonna fall apart like this. She's not gonna feel like we did, and so I was fighting to keep things the way I thought they should be. So when he was home, it was a battle all the time, because if I didn't like something he said or did, or I thought he wasn't behaving the way he should, or making me feel the way I wanted to feel, it was a fight. I mean, I have to say, I did not make life easy for anybody. He'd say a crossword, or maybe not show up to work, or show up home from work, or whatever, and of course I would question. He would get angry at the questions, because that's what drug use does. Yeah. And then I would be like, you gonna tell me where you been? And then there would be, like I said, it would end up in a fight, sometimes a vicious one, and
sometimes physical one. As
irresponsible, naive people tend to do. I'm not judging anyone if you've made this choice. If you're in this, I'm speaking about us. We were irresponsible, naive. We thought we could fix this by having another kid, just young and. Well, they're ugly, but I think they'll be okay. They've been pre-baked. We're about to put the goodies on them. Just hope they taste okay. Messy.
Messy Marvin. She's a messy cook, I know.
Messy cook. Okay, so we left off talking about bringing Camden into the mix, into the mass chaos that was our life. We planned Camden. He was a planned pregnancy, and I honestly, prior to that, said I'd never have another kid with Jeff. I was like, we're done. This is ridiculous. Our life is a mess. But,
well, and at that point, you had given your life to Christ.
Right. Yeah.
You had friends that began discipling you at work.
Yeah, we need to back up and speak about that. Earlier on in our marriage, I was just like, we've got to do something. We're killing each other, mentally and emotionally, just killing each other. And our daughter was suffering right in the mix with us, just torn between two parents who were fussing all the time. One memory that I try to mention every time we give our story is a memory of he and I fighting, just yelling, screaming, just awful things. And sometimes things would get thrown, and broken and holes in the walls. The fight.
Boots out the windows.
Yeah, it was bad. I can't deny how bad it was. Mostly on my part. Girl knows how to pitch a fit, but I remember a time in that little single wide trailer. All we had was like a little, I don't know, might have been like a 36 by 36 square
right, yeah.
table in our little kitchen area where we'd sit to eat, the three of us. And I don't remember how old she was, maybe 3 or 4. And we were fighting so bad in the living room, and the whole area was connected. Kitchen, living room was connected, and it was open. And I remember he and I just fussing so bad. And I look over and see her out of the corner of my eye, under the table, hiding from us. Mm-hmm. I think it's God. She doesn't remember that, and I think that's God's hand of mercy on her that she doesn't have that memory. But He won't let me forget it, and I don't see that as punishment. I just see it as a reminder of how I felt that day, how I made my child feel that day, and that I don't ever want to go back there. But this is around the same time where this job that I worked at a doctor's office, and there was women God put in my path that were just kind and gentle and patient with me, even though I was a little bit hard to deal with, I imagine, and emotional all the time because my home life was a wreck. They would pray for me, and I didn't understand that, but I would welcome it because something about them was just different. But I want to tell you about how I got saved before we move on to anything else. Jeff and I, the things were so bad with us that I knew we had to have counseling, and I called counselors, and we were a low-income family, and the counselors were expensive. We could not afford anybody, and he said he was willing to go, and he's like, all right, we'll go, just call him or whatever, just, stop nagging me. And I called every place I could and in our area, and it was just like $100 and something an hour, and I'm like, we can't do this. And I finally found a church that offered counseling, and look, it's at a church, Jeff. It's at a church, but they only ask for like a donation of whatever we can give at the time. If it's $20, it's $20. They're just willing to counsel us and sit with us, and so we went. I think you might have went twice.
Yeah, I went 2 times.
He bailed, but I knew there was something there. Even after the first couple of visits, I knew I had to keep going. I had to finish this thing out. Just having it was a lady counselor. Her name was Judy. Just having somebody to listen. She didn't make me feel judged or anything. She's a Christian, but she was not like, no, you shouldn't behave in that way or anything like that. She was listening. And she had a story of her own, and she shared that with me, and just the reality of her story made me feel very, very safe with her. Yeah, that's the word, safe. And throughout our time together, just through going through the counseling process, she gave me the gospel and introduced me to Christ, and that's how I got saved. And of course, I wanted to take that home to my family. I'm thinking, I'll talk to Jeff about this, and I'm going to take my little girl to church and all this, and it wasn't that easy.
It didn't go over so well with me. So.
No. I'm going to check on the pizza while you talk about how you felt about that.
Well, I remember her, coming home, and I knew from going to the two sessions at counseling that what they were talking about, and as I said before, I wasn't interested in that whatsoever. It meant nothing to me. It would actually make me angry. So, needless to say, it didn't fly very good with me. So, I never went again. And I could tell that, she was beginning to she was acting different. Not acting, but she was different. And still young in the faith, and
still a little aggressive.
But I remember something was different, and I didn't like it. But that's where it all started. She gave her life to Christ, and I ran from it. So.
I started going to church, taking Michaela to church, and then begging him to go. And on occasion he would go. It would usually be a fight to start with. He would go to get me to shut up because I didn't know how to do it. Look, I didn't know how to encourage him to go. I just nagged him. I was like, we're doing this.
Yeah, she tried to make me.
And you really can't force that.
No.
But But I just knew that, like, this is what we need. This is going to fix everything. And so anyway, back to Camden. Camden was born a few years after that. Michaela's turning 6, and we apologize for skipping around, but it's just, there's a lot to tell. And we brought another baby into it, our little boy, and goodness, it wasn't but 3 months, and it was really bad.
Yeah, I mean, at this time in my life, the meth use was, I mean, it had control of me, and you know, I was not the man that I once was. I was never a great one, but I wasn't terrible all the time. But by this point, you know, I wasn't even the same person anymore. It was all I wanted was to get high. Just I would stay awake for days. I would not eat right, and I mean, it began to take its toll on me. And I was an addict at that point. I didn't realize it then, but I was an addict. And I left. I remember leaving. I was gone for I don't know how long.
Yeah, Camden was born in September, and by January he was gone.
I remember it being
just gone.
New Year's or sometime.
He spent New Year's away.
Yeah,
I later on found out where he was, but he was gone for about 3 days.
I was at the bottom at that point.
And then of course, well, there's always leaving, coming back, and by this time he finally just said, we decided we would separate. I talked to a guy at church, a real sweet man, who was a youth pastor at the church I went to at the time, and he said that you cannot let him come and go like this anymore. He said, don't base it on divorce. Don't threaten divorce, but just say we need to separate so we can figure some things out and come back together. And he was up for that because that gave him some freedom.
It did, and that was the only reason, because I was only thinking about me and what I was going to be able to do. I thought I was going to be able to live the life that I thought I wanted to live. I was going to be able to do my meth, and hang out with whoever I wanted to, and I thought, okay, this is going to be the thing that makes me happy.
Yeah.
This is going to be what changes my life.
And
ultimately, it was.
Yeah.
It got me to. I mean, it got me to a point where I had nowhere else to turn. So,
well, I was thinking, though,
I didn't see it that way.
While you're thinking freedom, I was thinking, oh, healing. This is going to be it. We'll stop arguing. We'll let things settle. And then we will be able to come back level-headed and talk it out and figure out where the problem lies and fix it. But I was really convinced about the drug use by this time. I still didn't know for sure, but I'd find baggies here and there and stuff in his pockets and just the behavior. And I was like, something's wrong.
Yeah.
Like, this dude's on something. I didn't know what it was, but I knew he was on something. And I would even, like, drug test, and he would be willing to take it. I'm like, you got to take a drug test. I got to know what's going on. And he's like, yeah, fine, bring one.
Until
and I would.
She brought it.
And when I brought it, though, that's when I would get cussed out and how dare you and all this. And
well, that's because I knew I was going to fail it.
So that tells me without telling me. Like, I just knew by that point.
When we split up and I thought I had my freedom and the life I'd been chasing for so long, I was with people who were also addicts, and that's when I got involved with someone else. And we were still married, but I got involved with another woman, and that's what we done. We partied and we got high and we did meth, and I thought it was, this is the greatest thing in the world. And anyway, I was completely gone. I was in really bad shape. I don't even remember how much I weighed then.
That's pretty bad.
I was like a walking skeleton. I'm not a big person anyway, but I was very, very, very bad shape. I didn't see my children. Anyway, it ultimately ended up in us getting a divorce.
Yeah.
Which
a mutual friend called and said, I got to tell you something. And Jeff was gone. I didn't really keep up with where he was at this point because I just kind of felt like it was going to end anyway. We were still married, but there was obviously, it wasn't going to be the healing process like I thought. And I was just trying to take care of my kids and keep working as best I could. And I would try to call him for help with money and bills. And but a friend called and said, I got to tell you something. And he said, I found out that Jeff's going to be a dad again. And so it's crazy because I was surprised but not surprised. Like, I knew he had found a friend, and I knew or suspected that things had been going on. Actually, I think I knew by that time. All I can remember is pain, but surprisingly not anger, which is usually my first response to everything. Just anger is usually my first response to everything. But I remember feeling pain and brokenness. But it was almost, no, it wasn't a clear voice, but it was just a nudging in my spirit that says, you're going to love this child. And I felt sorry for her. I didn't know it was going to be a boy at the time, but I felt sorry for this baby. And let me not burn the pizza. I smell something. Hold on. I remember feeling like I'm going to love this baby. And I didn't know in what capacity, because I just knew that at that point I pretty much settled that my marriage was over. Because what can you do? I mean, what else is there left to do but get divorced? He's moved on. He's obviously showing no signs of wanting to be a family, and he started a new one. So I went and filed for divorce because that's all I knew to do. But I just knew that I was gonna. This was gonna be my 2 kids, brother or sister, and I felt brokenness for this baby because it's been born to drug addicted parents, and I was terrified. I was like, this kid's gonna have a hard life. I was afraid for this child. I was like, well, whatever capacity I'm in, I'll pray and I will love, and even if I'm just the half sibling's mom. But so we got divorced. I mean, what else? I really didn't know what else to do.
Yeah, I mean, at this point I
didn't want to give up, but what else? I mean, it was done.
Yeah, I had really settled into the addict life. I mean, I'd wander around, I'd stay here a few nights, just wherever I ended up. Wherever the drugs were, that's where I followed. So,
I prayed for him. I was still learning. I still knew Christian, still learning these things, still going to church, and I remember this was like the hardest time of my life, but the best time of my life at the same time. As crazy as that sounds, because I encountered the Lord in a way that in that pit that I was in. There was a time. I mean, we almost lost our home. The bank was calling to foreclose, saying if you don't show up with some money, and so I had that pressure. I was trying to. I think I had a car repoed during this time. I was trying to pay daycare for after school for Michaela in elementary school. I worked a lot, so she had to go straight into the after school program, which was not free. And then of course daycare for my baby, and so all this added up, and I had a lot of stress. But in the evenings, I'd put her to bed in my bed. She slept with me during that time. I put him in his room, in his crib, and tuck her into my bed and pray with her. We prayed for Daddy, and we prayed for Daddy's friend, and all the things going on. And I just taught her, using this time to teach her how to pray. And I would go to her room and just fall apart. I mean, I didn't want her to see me like that, so I'd get her tucked in. We would pray, and she'd get to sleep, and I would go to her room, and fall apart. And cry till I was dry, and just pray. But in that moment is where I felt so close to Jesus. Like, I knew he was there. It was a mess. Like, I knew that this was not how life was supposed to be, and I knew things were bad, but and there was moments where I was angry at God. I will be honest with you about that. I was mad. I was like, you hate divorce? Here I am. I got saved. I'm taking my kids to church. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, and you're still letting this happen? I was mad. But at the same time, in those horrible, horrible moments, when I would fall apart and just cry till I just couldn't move and drag myself to bed, I felt him there. And I just knew. I was like, I don't know how this is going to end. I didn't know but I knew if I clung to Jesus, I would survive it. That's the only way. I was either going to be a strong single mom, or he was going to send somebody that was going to love me and my kids like his own, or he would heal Jeff, and whatever would happen. I didn't know. I just knew if I clung to Jesus, I'd be okay, whatever the outcome. I was just like, I don't even care what happens tomorrow. I just know I got to hold on to him because I can't breathe otherwise. And like I said, I had my anger moments with him, but something about him being there, I could feel it. And the people he surrounded me with, he made sure I wasn't alone in anything. Like, I felt alone because nobody I knew had ever experienced this, so they couldn't really say they'd been there, but they were with me in the pit. So I remember thinking, I will come through this okay. I'll be stronger on the other side. I don't know what's going to happen. But I couldn't let go of God. And throughout this process, I realized, and most of this I realized on the other side of it looking back, that we had to be broken down. Like, yes, God hates divorce, but he still allowed this mess to happen because, and I could have been angry and bitter with him about that, because I'm like, God's in control, then why is my life a mess? But the thing is, if you remember back in the beginning, I put a lot of pressure on Jeff to fill my void. And I realized that I was functioning based off of how he talked to me or how he treated me or whether or not he came home from work at all. I was a mess. I didn't parent well. I would call into work many times because I was just a mess and couldn't get out of bed. I mean, when someone has that much power over how you function, they have too much power. And I realized that Jeff was too high on my list. He was in God's place. And it took him being pulled away from me to realize that I had to rely on God to survive. That my day, that I had to surrender the right to function based off of how I felt. My emotions were a wreck, but I couldn't function that way. I had to be a mama, and I had to go to work, and I had to lean on. That's where that Philippians 4:13 comes to life. I had to call on his strength. The only way I could do that was because Christ was my strength. And I was clinging to him. And that's where he finally took his rightful place in my life as the head of me, the head of my home. I started being able to put one foot in front of the other because it didn't depend on what Jeff was doing that day. It depended on a constant, steady, never-changing God who gave me a source of strength. The bills got paid. I can't even tell you how. Him impressing on other people to send money. I didn't ask. I did not ask. He would impress upon people to provide. There was always just enough money for gas and groceries in the daycare. My income didn't change, and Jeff didn't suddenly start paying child support. So none of that changed. It was all because God worked something out. So I have to point it all to him. So that's where I was in the transition period with Jeff being gone.
About to talk about that weekend that I ended up back at the house.
A few months, it wasn't really a long time. It felt like forever, but the timeline really wasn't that long. But he started calling late at night, of course, to check on the kids. I'm like, you can't talk to them now. They're in the bed. They're little. Yeah. We started talking about things though, and I think he started realizing that things were changing for us, for me and the kids at home, and I think he started missing them. So to get to that weekend Jeff spoke about, he called wanting to come for a visit, and I would let him visit the kids anytime he wanted to, but I wouldn't let him be alone because I knew there was a drug problem, and he did admit that he'd been on meth. By this time I knew for sure. Yeah. And so he wanted to come and see the kids, and
this was a Saturday night. Yeah.
He came over, and I did let him stay there. I slept on the couch and let him sleep in the bedroom with our daughter and spend time with her because she's a daddy's girl. She needed her daddy, and having him not there every day was really taking a toll on her. And our baby was still just a few months old, so he didn't have a clue. Well, as long as Mama was there to feed him, he was fine.
He's still that one.
But so I let him stay that night. It was a Saturday night. But Sunday morning, I was like, Jeff being here is not changing anything. Yeah. I'm going to get my kids up and go to church.
And they did. They woke up to get ready to go to church, just like I was.
Now, keep in mind, we were divorced, so he'd moved out. All his stuff was gone. But sometime prior to this weekend, I'd found one pair of pants in our closet. I remember hanging it up on the bedroom door to remember to give them back to him next time I saw him. I didn't know when that was going to be. Yep. But I remember I did that. And anyway, that Sunday morning he got up and he said, we were getting ready for church, and I said, and I was probably snotty, I don't remember, but I said, told him we were going to church, whether he was there or not or whatever, and he said, well, if I had clean pants, I'd go with y'all. And of course, still probably being snotty.
Oh, she was, I'm sure.
I didn't see the God in this moment at all. I was just like, because he's done this to me before. I was like, I called his bluff.
I used to tell her a lot of Saturday nights that I would go to church with him on Sunday. Oh, yeah. This is what makes it ironic. And then when Sunday morning rolled around, I'd start a fight and leave.
Yeah.
So.
Well, in this particular case, I was ready for it. I was like, whatever caught his bluff. I say, if you had a pair of pants, I said, well, you got a pair of pants that you forgot to take with you. They're hanging on the bedroom door. If you really want to go,
not good pants.
I don't remember what they were, but
I do.
I said, if you really wanted to go, you put those on and go.
And I did.
He did.
No questions asked. I said, all right, I got a pair of pants.
Yeah, he's like, he went and
like I remember being in that service, and y'all know how I told you I felt about God, and I thought it was a bunch of poop, but
and I didn't expect much. I was like, yeah, he's gonna go just so he can say he went, and he's trying to be the dad or whatever.
Yeah,
I mean, I had no.
She had her ideas,
snotty.
but and I had my ideas, and
I was glad he was going. Don't get me wrong.
I can't explain even to this day why I went willingly, and I went in feeling different, and I don't remember the message. I don't remember none of it except for when Brother Doug, that was the preacher at the time, when he gave an invitation and asked if, he just basically said, if you die today, do you know where you'd go?
Yeah.
And
we always had an altar call. Brother Doug gave the gospel, and he made sure everybody had an opportunity to come, and we it's always heads bowed and eyes closed, and he's giving people a private moment to acknowledge Christ and come down if they want to. And so that's the position I was in. I was in that posture, head bowed and eyes closed, and I wasn't expecting Jeff to move. I hate to admit that I really wasn't expecting, hopeful but not really expecting. And somebody nudged me. I didn't know Jeff got up. Somebody nudged me, and I look. I don't even know who that was.
I don't know.
And I look up, and Jeff's at the altar with one of our deacons, and I'm like, what's going on now? Because I'm like,
She didn't believe in that.
I didn't, y'all. It would have been years of lies. I was like,
she didn't trust me, to say the least. But
I trusted God. I knew God could save. I just didn't believe Jeff was going to let him.
She also knew my attitude toward God and church and all that, and nothing had changed in my life up to this point, except for I said if I had clean pants. I guess it was the clean pants. But I went, and when he did ask for people to come down, I couldn't sit there. I had no choice. I mean, something made me get up and go.
Yeah.
And when I got down there talking to Brother Richard, and I mean, it was just like, he asked me questions, he read me scriptures, and I accepted Christ right there on the spot. And I didn't know what in the world I was going to do.
Yeah. I
didn't know, like, how am I going to live up to this? And what have I done? What am I doing? Am I crazy? But I remember all these emotions, and I was overwhelmed by Christ's love when he came into my heart. He overwhelmed me, and all I could do was cry.
Yeah. While we take a brief intermission, I'm going to show y'all my pizza. Look at that. It actually looks like pizza. I have no idea how it tastes yet. We will see in a minute. But the fact that I didn't burn it, we're calling this a good day.
As I was saying, as I accepted Christ in my life, I was a changed man, and I knew it. I just didn't know what to do with it. So after church that day, when we were done and church service was over, of course there was a lot of excitement and questions, of course.
Yeah. Of course I was excited that he'd went down and, went to the altar. And I was hopeful that he truly surrendered. But that didn't fix the problem. We were still divorced. He still had a baby on the way with someone else, and I still didn't know what that meant. Like I was still glad though, because regardless of what it meant for us, he was going to be a better daddy. And because that's a relationship that he was always going to have, and I needed it to be a good relationship. And so I didn't make it easy for him though. I had trust issues with him. So.
Rightfully so. I mean, look at what I put her through and the lies that I've told. I understood.
I was watching for changed behavior. I mean, is he still lying? Is he going to work? I mean, he went back to stay. During the time of our divorce, he was staying with. You staying with Mama, right?
There at the end, yeah. I was.
You were here, there, and everywhere before that.
Yeah.
Towards the end, like he said, he was staying with his grandmother, so I wanted to make sure he was doing something productive. We talked a little more. There came a time where he said he wanted to get back together. And of course that's what my heart wanted, but I had to just
She
be
didn't
sure.
let me know that.
Huh?
She didn't want to let me know that.
I just didn't want to make a mistake.
Yeah.
Again. I just didn't want to put my kids through anything like that again. So there came a period where he was talking to me about wanting to come back, and he was seeming to be changed. A lot of things were different about him, but one of the biggest differences I remember is I would make him take a drug test. And,
Rightfully so.
And remember, prior to, I would even suggest it, or I would bring one home for him to take, and he would be upset. But this time, I would bring one home, and he would take it immediately, and he would pass. And so
we went and talked to Brother Doug.
Well, you said you wanted to get married again, and I was a little hesitant. Of course, I wanted my family put back together, and I wanted him to be a godly father and all that. But I remember that now. I did go to Brother Doug and told him I didn't know what to do. Brother Doug was our pastor, and but Jeff you had been coming to church with us, hadn't you?
Yeah.
He did end up you did end up staying with us, with me and the kids. We weren't living as a married couple, but he was staying with us to get away
You slept
from.
on the couch, and
That's right.
I slept in the bed.
I can't believe I forgot that.
Yeah.
He started staying with us to separate himself from
to get away from all that life and all the people.
all the stuff that was around where he had been staying was temptation and that the life he had just escaped from. So he ended up staying with us. That's right. And but we wasn't living as a married couple. But I did talk to Brother Doug and just needing godly counsel. What do I do? And he did talk with me, and I know he prayed for I don't know how much, but probably a lot. He loved Jeff like a son, and he made that clear. He was such a good man. He still is a good man. I'm speaking of him like he's dead. He's just not our pastor anymore. But he was. I'll never forget him. He was so good to us, and he was firm with Jeff when he needed to be. As you know, it's almost like he spoke to him like a father would. Kind of making sure he understood where he'd been and the damage he'd done, and but there's hope and there's God's grace, and he counseled us a little bit, and that was counseling that Jeff actually did finish. He went through that, but yeah, and then he was working steadily, and just a lot of different things. A lot of things about him changed, and like I said, I drug tested him, made sure that was clean, and through a lot of prayer, I felt like this was God's will. This was the right step. So we did end up remarrying.
Yep.
So our first marriage lasted 6 years, and we are on round 2, and it has been 14. So altogether, we have been married 20 years. So he's 14 years clean. We're 14 years remarried. 14 years in. He's 14 years into his Christian walk, and it's been good. God has been good to us. Now, I guess, getting saved, getting remarried didn't mean that it was going to be easy. We still there's still a baby coming.
Still had a new son coming. So.
Yeah, that was still a challenge to face. There was still going to be a lot there, but at this moment in time, I knew that I was going to be the best stepmom I could be. Prior to that, I knew I was going to love this child as his half-sibling's mom, just as a presence. But now I knew I was going to be a stepmama, and I was going to love this baby like he was my own. And so that's when our Bryson was born. Yep. We were remarried before he was born. Remarried in August. Bryson was born November.
Yep.
And so we had a new routine. We He was a little bit sick when he was born, went through a surgery, but from the time he was 2 months, we visited with him prior to him. We were there for the surgery at the hospital and everything like that, but from the time he was 2 months, we started getting him every other weekend. And so we were just starting a good routine there, and we will probably need to, out of respect for all parties involved, just kind of give you a general there were some choices made, some bad choices, and he was in a situation that was not really safe. Keep in mind there was habits on that side too, and we knew that we just had to pray for God to intervene because he was not in a safe place. We got him every other weekend, but during that other time we were worried about his safety. We knew he was loved, but just like in Jeff's case, he loved our kids, but there came a time where he wasn't safe for our kids at that time while he was doing the things he was doing. And so in this case, it was the same for Bryson when he was not with us. And so some circumstances came about to where we were able to take over custody when he was about 18 months.
Yep.
So we started picking up as a whole family unit, and it felt right. It felt wonderful. He was with us all the time. There was a time period where, after some time passed and there was an incarceration and all that, he was able to start having visits with his other family, and
we could just tell something and still wasn't right.
Yeah. A lot happened, but we just prayed, and it took a lot of time for us to really decide what might be best. And we don't ever want to hurt anyone or cause any trauma to a child. And but Bryson, he was our son, and he'd been with us full time, with me as a mom full time since he was 18 months old. I mean, like I said, I'd always been in his life prior to that, but it was full time from 18 months. So a few years passed like that, and to him, I was mommy, and to my heart, he was my son, my baby. And like I said, we'd never intentionally hurt anyone, but it just came to a point where he was 5 years old, and just there was things happening, red flags, just different things going on that we just knew that only for his good. It wasn't vindictive. It wasn't out of frustration or anger. It was just for his own good that I seek out a step-parent adoption. So I did that. And it was contested. It wasn't just freely given, which I respect that, really, because I mean, in a way, because I knew it's hard to just hand over your child, and I would never ever really question that. But during the course of the day, I think that the decision was made. It was a long day of court. Decision was made that it would be best for him. Mm-hmm. So, and I believe that was all God working on everybody's heart, from the judge to the birth mom to us, my lawyer, everything. I believe it was just God, a Holy Spirit move. And again, we were not trying to just rip a baby from a mother's arms. We were just trying to make sure he was safe, because in my heart, he'd been with us so long, had a structured life, safe, knew me as mom. Like, I'd never lied to him. He knew the situation, but in his childlike mind, I mean, I was mommy, and he I'm thinking, if something ever happened to Jeff as a step parent, I had no legal right to him. He would automatically go back, even if the situation wasn't structured or safe. He would automatically go back because I had no legal rights to keep him, even though he'd been with us for so long. So I had to do something for that reason alone. And so God showed up that day, and so Bryson is legally 100% my son, and he is one of the biggest blessings I could ever ask for. He's a challenge sometimes.
A lot of times.
All our kids are, though, in their own way. But he's he's wonderful, and he's safe, and he knows his story. There's no lies. He knows that he is just biologically mine by adoption. But he's 14 now. Just had his 14th birthday, and he is smart and learning a lot of new things, and always excuse me, eager to help and be hands-on everything, even if you shouldn't be. Oh, why am I coughing? Yeah, usually having to tell him to chill out and slow down on something, but he's always wanting to tinker with something, and he's good, and we're proud of him, and so our family feels whole. I mean, we've got our daughter, she's doing well, and she's in college and thriving, and our middle son, and thankfully he has no memory. He was a newborn,
little,
just a few months old. With all that going on, he doesn't have any memory of the bad times. And of course, thankfully for Bryson's sake, Jeff had gotten saved and changed his life before he was even born.
Yep.
So all they know is the stories we tell, and we're teaching them to tell their stories to that point to God, so they can just know that what God has done. Their life could be completely different. Had God not intervened for us, my kids' lives would be very, very different.
Yep.
Could have ended up a lot harder than it
Could have
has.
been. So, I mean, if you know anyone or you yourself are struggling, and you're thinking, this stuff ain't for me, and I've done too much, I've messed up too much.
No, if you're breathing, there's
true.
hope.
No, there's always help. God will always help. He's just sitting there waiting on you.
You are not too far gone to be forgiven.
No, Romans 10:13 says that whosoever shall call on the name of the Lord will be saved.
Yeah.
And that included me, and that includes you.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And me. I mean, none of us are perfect. None of us get it together, have it together all the time.
Some of us are real close, but
stop. But yeah, so we just want to give you a sense of hope. I'm sorry this ran long, but there's a lot to tell, and
we just skimmed it.
Yeah. We felt led to do it, so I know that on the other side of this camera, someone is gonna need to hear it, even if it's just one person. It was for you, and we hope that there's a new fire lit inside your heart, a new sense of hope. If you're dealing with a troubled marriage or an addiction, or you have a wayward child, whatever the situation is, there is hope.
Always hope.
There is hope. And I promise you, just like in that moment that I have where I'm like, if I just cling to the Lord, I'll be okay. I don't know what the outcome's going to be, but I just trust Him with it. I knew what I wanted to happen, but I had to just surrender to what He wanted to happen. And even though my life was a mess and I didn't understand that, I didn't understand why He was allowing all that. It took me a long time to understand why He allowed all that. The bad things that happen to us aren't always an attack. Sometimes it's a time where God is saying, I'm going to allow this so you can lean on me. I can show up for you so you can see me for who I really am.
Yep.
Maybe you're in a time like that. I'm just know that we're going to pray for you. We're going to pray for everybody who could come within earshot of the story.
Yep. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them.
Please comment. Our email will be in the description box if you want to email to talk about anything. We are not perfect. We don't have it together. We're not theologians. I'm not going to, but we get it. We've been through some things.
We know what God's done and what He's able to do.
Yes. So, I can't say, we certainly can't fix anything, but we can just be a little voice of hope.
Yep.
And I hope that's all we are. We just want to be vessels of what God has given us. And this is all about Him. I know we talk a lot about us, but it's what He has done
through us.
The mess we made and what He has done in and through it. So we thank you for hanging in with us this long. Thank you for listening. And those of you that asked us to tell this story, I hope that you got something from it. Please do share it if you know of anyone who could have some hope. And one scripture I want to share with you, and it's kind of cliche, people hear it a lot, especially when something bad happens, but it came to life for me in that early Christian walk, going through this divorce and this situation. It was Romans 8:28. Even when we got remarried, I put it on our wedding invitation when we had our wedding, and inviting people to come and join with us as we reunited our family. But it's all things will work together for good to them that love God, and to them who are called according to His purpose. Look, that is a promise, but it's a conditional promise. You have to love God. He will work all things together for good. That's all things.
Even
That's
our
not.
junk.
Yes, that means He will take this bad situation to make it good. He can to make something good out of something awful. He will make beauty out of ashes. And I saw that. I just knew if I just held on to Him, if I just walked with Him, I would be okay, no matter what the outcome was. Even if Jeff and I had never gotten back together, I knew I would stay with Him, and I would stay with Christ and walk with Him, and I would be okay. Even if I had to be single and take care of my babies by myself, I knew I really wouldn't be by myself. So that moment of surrender, I think, was a turning point in my life where God truly took His rightful place in my heart. And that was when I could honestly let go of Jeff and let him do what he was going to do. I had to release him and let God take over. And then I think Jeff had to hit rock bottom to where he could only see that there was no other way but God to get out of this. And sometimes, if you're like us, you learn everything the hard way. And that's... So, I hope you got something from this painfully long video. We didn't intend for it to be that long, but there's just no way to... This is still a canned version, but there's no way to condense it down a whole lot more. But we pray God's blessings on all of you who are watching this. And we thank you for watching. And we love you for being part of this journey with us.
Thank you. No, just thank y'all for watching.
All right. Well, we'll see you next time.